Welcome back, everybody. Coast to Coast, This Week in America. Clarence Mike Dunaway was born in California in 1930 during the Great Depression. He grew up there, was in the Navy in 1947, spent 2.5 years in South Korea, discharged in 1953, was able to travel the country. In his late 70s, when he was bored, he decided to write, and he hasn't stopped. He's the author of the highly acclaimed Cousins trilogy, a series that offers twists and turns that will defy a reader's definition of the word mystery. Also the novels Love Has a Blind Eye and Two Brothers. Bored no more and entertaining readers with his literary skills, Clarence Mike Dunaway joining us on This Week in America. Clarence, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's glad to be with you.
It is a pleasure to have you with us and talk about all the books and the process of writing all of these books, which you did a little bit later in life. Let's start by talking about when this interest in writing began for you. Has this been something you've always had an interest in?
No, I never had an interest in doing anything during my life. I never even went to high school because I hated school so bad. Any education I got was working with college-educated people throughout my life. So anyhow, one correction I have to make, I was in the entire part of Korea for 2.5 years, not just the South.
Okay, so you really got to see quite a bit of the country there, part of the experiences that you had. Those experiences that you had early in life, how has that influenced who you are today and who you are as a writer, all of that expertise, all that experience that you bring to your writing?
Well, in 1994, I always thought my life was boring. Excuse me. And I don't know, suddenly one day in my travels, I was working for a company in Long Beach, and I had to travel the entire state, covering many cities. And I got interested, thinking my life wasn't as bad as it was, and so as boring as it was, I should say. So I thought I'd write an autobiography. So in 1995, I wrote an autobiography. I had nothing but thoughts when I traveled, and when I got to my destination, I'd write it down on paper in longhand. And later on that year, I had it done, 600 pages in all. And I took and bought a cheap computer, and I typed it in, and thus I have my first book, but I have not published it. I'm revising it because it is too long. And that gave me a little interesting in life, trying to write. At my age, I was probably 78 years old. And I retired in 95. And so I got this job that I had little to do but wait on customers, and there were few, so I had a lot of time to write. So about 3 days a week, 3 hours or 4 hours a day, I would take a notebook and write down Cousins. I decided to start with that, and I wrote all. Cousins was so long, it took me forever to. It didn't take as long as it sounds, but it was a long book, and I thought it was way too long. So I cut it in half and developed the sequel, Cousin 2, and added about 40 pages to the beginning of it and made it long enough. And then just for the heck of it, I, for some reason or another, decided to write the book, which is actually Cousins 3. And now it doesn't have to be a trilogy. It was written so that Cousins 2 can be a sequel. And if you want to make a trilogy out of it, that's great.
Yes.
And so I wrote all 3 of them. And I couldn't tell you, it probably took me maybe a year to write the 3 books. But I formatted them and threw them up on the shelf. I manuscript them and put them up on the shelf, and they laid there for many years. And one day after I finished all that, I decided that I would like to challenge myself to writing a Western. So I went to places I used to travel when I was selling, and I picked Prescott, Arizona, because it seemed like a suitable place at the time. I hadn't seen it in many years, but I did a little research on it, how it was back in 1871, and I learned the Indian tribes and where the reservations were, and there was a fort just out of 17 miles out of the city and things like this. But I did my homework on it, and I started jotting it down. My sister died in 2008, and when I was unloading the stuff from her place and moving it to mine, I discovered a little 3x6 notepad with maybe a half a dozen writings on it, and I it just got so interesting, just to take off, and it got so interesting, I decided I would use that to start Two Brothers with, and that's what I did. And so I picked it up from there and wrote the rest of the story. But so much for that one. But I don't know. Go ahead. I'd like to hear from you.
Well, I was going to say these books are available at Amazon. Two Brothers that Clarence just talked about, Love Has a Blind Eye. The Cousins, the trilogy Cousins, Cousins 2 and Cousins 3, available at Amazon. So you can go there, look for books by Clarence Mike Dunaway. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can link on directly to that Amazon link and get the information. Let's go back and talk about Cousins for a second. Where did that idea, the Cousins concept, come from? Because it's a very strong idea. Obviously, a lot of material there. You've written 3 books with the idea, the theme of cousins. Where did that idea originally come from?
I haven't a clue. I really haven't. I'm telling you, on any of these books, I have been blessed, because I can sit down, or I could sit down with a pen and pencil and paper, and I could, an idea would be in my head before I finished the first sentence, and the next sentence was already written in my head. So in that sense, I was blessed. I could go through an entire book without have to think too much about it. It just came out. And I thought that was pretty amazing. So I went through and did all 3 of them the same. Every book has been written the same way.
That's interesting. So once you start, the story sort of flows in your mind. Obviously, you have an imagination and you have a vision for where the story is going to go. So it sort of writes itself, is what you're saying. Once you sit down, the ideas start coming to you.
Exactly. And that's great. I felt blessed to be able to do that, because I never had the education. I did have a little experience of traveling around a lot, so I picked up some things from that. But other than that, that was the way it worked. Love Has a Blind Eye, for example. I met a 40-year-old woman who we had hit it off, was getting laughing. We made each other laugh, so we had a lot of fun together for a while. And she said, and she'd tell me about her life. She told me originally she was a very private person, but before a few weeks was over with, I knew everything about her. And then after about 4 months, I got tired of her. I'm sorry to say that, but I did. We broke up, and it wasn't an engagement. It wasn't nothing. It was just a friendship. And I told her, I will finish this book, but I'll do it on my own terms. And so I changed her name and all the necessary things to keep me out of jail.
Good idea.
And moved her. I changed her son to a daughter, and I changed the locations and everything. But after the first 8 pages, I believe it is, I took it off on my own, and I wrote the rest of the story on my own. And like I said, these ideas just pop up into my head as I'm writing, and I don't have to think, research, or anything else. Now, at my age now, I may not be able to continue to do that, but I am in the process of writing a book, a true story book about my son who committed suicide back in 2017. And I'm trying to write a colorful book and get all the people that he knew to put their words down, and I'll put their letters and pictures and everything in as they wrote them.
Oh, yes. What a nice tribute.
And when I get through, it'll be full of pictures and progressively as he grew up,
Yes.
And as they tell the story, that will be so told in the book. I won't change anything.
Well,
so
boy, what a heartfelt project that will be, and a touching way to remember your son. What are you mentioned that project? Are you working on other books now? With Cousins, this is Cousins 3 now. Cousins 3 is just out, and you'll find it if you go to Barnes & Noble, if you go to Amazon, the usual places looking for the books. Will there be another Cousins episode?
I don't think so. I think I pretty well wore that one out. Actually, the Cousins 3 is entitled The Book. And the reason I wrote that one was because it just came out in my head that Connor, who was the lead cousin in the first two books, on his way to work one day, went through the back streets on the way and he came to a yard sale. He stopped in and he looked around, there was books here, and he thumbed through my autobiography, which was Cast a Dark Shadow. And he thought, well, it's interesting. Never heard of the author, but it's an interesting start, so I'll take it and look at it. So all through the book, I took excerpts out of there and let the family live out some of the things that I did, like be in Hawaii and going to different parks and whatever,
Oh, yes.
And every night the wife would make Connor read her to sleep. So any, and so anyhow, it turned out that in that book there was a lot of murders because of the fact that the first and second book didn't come to a head. Cousins 1 doesn't solve the crimes at all. It's all picked up in 2, and there's a large court trial that goes through in Cousins 2, and in 3, all of a sudden the witnesses from the court trial of 2 starts dying off, getting killed, they're murdered, and so that picks up that story, and I have to go through with it, and I found a way to solve it, and that's the way that was. So I was very happy with the way it came out.
What is, when you're writing with as many twists and turns as you have in the books, talk about the challenge of doing that. How difficult, or does that come easy where we think you're going in one direction, but suddenly there's a little turn and we find the book is going in another direction? How is that to write? Does that come easy for you, or is that a challenge to keep us guessing?
I don't really think too much about it. This person that the killer I'm looking for in the book tells me that the mother works at a place called, she slipped. She said La Lou, and then she turned around and said Lulu's. So after a fashion, I got to thinking about it, and there happened to be a place out of El Paso up in, oh, what's the name of the state? I'm sorry. Anyhow, it's called La Luz, which means the light. So I kind of put it together, and I thought that this killer made the error of giving me that knowledge. So I went to El Paso instead of Winslow, Arizona, where the person was supposed to be going, and I tracked him down up there and actually killed him.
Isn't it fun when you have that control? It's like, okay, they're dead today.
Well, but I had to do something, but there was many crimes to be solved. The thing was this twin sisters were living in Chicago when I was 6 years old. One of them fell down the stairs. The one on top of the stairs was just standing there looking until the mother came out of the bedroom, and all of a sudden she started screaming, and her mother said they, for then on, blamed her for pushing her down the stairs. The father went down below, picked her up, and took her to the hospital, and it was nothing. She wasn't that seriously bad. So, but he didn't want the girl to know it. So he took her to a friend of his 200 miles from Chicago, and they raised her. So things started happening from there. The calls would come from Chicago to her stepfather, who would make a call to Florida perhaps, and he would make a call to the city where the books are written about, and then a murder would occur. And then that backtrack and get the money back to him by, oh, Lord. I don't know. I just can't keep putting twists and turns into it, but they're there. They're in every book, and
They are there. And obviously, they're not something you necessarily prepare for. It's where the story takes you, is where you go. Do you suddenly get in the middle of writing something and go, no, I think I'm going to go in this direction with it? You're like killing the people when you want to.
No, I don't really think a lot about it. I'm telling you, it's just
It
something
just
that.
happens.
Well, when I start down that line of killing people because they were witnesses in the trial, it comes easy because I start with number one, number
Oh,
two, number
yes.
three. You understand? And then even the judge in the trial was attempted murder, but it happened that the chauffeur was going to wash the car before he took her to court, and he took it out of gear and didn't start the motor. He just took it out of gear, let it roll 20 feet down the driveway, washed the car, and then when she came, she wouldn't get her feet wet. So when she came out of the door, he turned it on to go pick her up, and blew it up and killed him needlessly because they weren't after him; they were after the judge. So just little things like that, and where they come from, I couldn't tell you. But
Well,
I'm
you've done so well with the books. It's hard to believe that you started this so late in life and you're doing so well with the books now. I got a couple minutes left in the program. Do you do a lot of reading? Are there authors that you enjoy reading now?
I've read very few books. John Grisham, a couple of his books.
Yes.
Other than that, I don't read. That's weird. I just always been too lazy to read, and now now reading to me is kind of boring.
It's
I
easier for you to do the writing, apparently.
Well, it is, and I don't even read my own books. I go back the first time after I read them, after I write them, I go back and proofread, and that's about it. From then on, I cast it aside and go on to something else. So,
I got about a minute or so left. How much fun is this for you? I get the impression you're really enjoying this and writing these books.
well, if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it.
Yep, yep, yep. The Cousins was it, but Cousins one, and that's the end of it. Certainly not a couple more. And uh, we'll go through all the books again. These are books by Clarence Mike Dunaway. The books you'll find at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Among them, Love Has a Blind Eye, Two Brothers, Cousins, Cousins 2, Heading Home, Cousins 3, the book. That's just the new one in the series that's available. And again, all of them at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And you can link on directly to the Amazon link by going to our link at thisweekinamerica.us. Mike, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Best of luck with your future writing. Hopefully, we'll stay in touch. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your writing experiences with us and information on the books today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for making it easy.
It was fun. It was great having you with us. Our guest, Clarence Mike Dunaway, author of the Cousins trilogy, along with Love Has a Blind Eye and Two Brothers. Books available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we're back on today's program right after these messages.